Awesome. Well, hello everyone again. My name is Sydney, PM on the PowerShell team at Microsoft, and one of the projects that is near and dear to my heart is PowerShellGet, and especially the work we've been doing on the 3.0 project. So I wanted to give a little bit of an explanation of what's going on there, what you can expect, and show off some of the new features that are coming your way. Hopefully soon. But of course, first, thanks to the sponsors for making this possible. And for today's agenda, I hope you can sort of answer these questions by the end, explain what is PowerShellGet v3, what do we mean by that, what are the big changes to be aware of as this sort of big project comes down the pipeline, where we're at in the release timeline and what's already available for you to start playing with and using and giving feedback on today. One of the biggest questions I get asked around PowerShellGet v3 is what is taking so long. So I kind of wanted to address that head on and also, of course, take questions more about how the project is progressing. I get the question a lot of when it'll be available, so I want to discuss that a little bit further and talk more in depth about where exactly we are in our release timeline. What about shipping in PowerShell? What's going to happen to PowerShellGet v2? These are some other common questions I get. So for starters, what is PowerShellGet v3? So PowerShellGet v3 is a complete rewrite of PowerShellGet. So I'm guessing most of you are familiar, but PowerShellGet is the module that allows you to do things like find, install, update, publish module scripts and DSC resources. And so by default, this is commonly with the PowerShell gallery, but it can be with a number of different package sources. And so our goal with this project at a high level was first to create a more intuitive package manager. We wanted to remove unnecessary prompts when possible with sort of this principle of it just works. We also wanted to address top customer issues. Due to the original underlying architecture of PowerShellGet, in particular, its sort of dependency structure, it's made it incredibly difficult for us to actually iterate on the module and make some progress towards some customer issues that are real pain points and have been sitting there for quite a long time. So a big part of this is also improving the maintainability. And this goes back to the removed dependencies and the dependency structure of the module. And it also will be written in C# versus PowerShell script, which we think from our team's perspective will actually make the package much more maintainable for us over the long term and allow us to iterate on those top issues a little bit faster once we get there. I also mentioned the simplified interface. The principle of design that we've been using as we've been making decisions is it should just work. And so we use those words a lot when kind of deciding which way we want to make default parameters and how we want to design the commandlet interface overall. We also have had a pretty big focus throughout this milestone on improving our build and test. We want to be able to release often, and we also want to be able to have really stable releases. A big challenge for us in previous versions of PowerShellGet was unintentional breaking changes. Releases. Oh, let me get this back up here. I think we're good. Good? Okay, cool. And additionally, testing beyond just the PowerShell gallery. So I mentioned that PowerShell gallery is one of the main ways that PowerShellGet is used because it's the public repository that's registered by default. But part of the v3 project is we trying to improve our testing around other repositories or support for other types of repositories, and also be a little bit more future looking as to what repositories may look like in the future. Another big high-level goal of this was improved performance. And we think about performance in a couple of ways. So one way is how long does it take to find and install modules? This is particularly important in certain experiences that are sensitive to time. Maybe you're trying to run an Azure function and you need the AZ module. And so making sure that that can run smoothly for you and consistently, and you know you're going to be able to install it in time and have time to use it, is really a key scenario for us. Additionally, performance on the gallery. So the way that PowerShellGet today, the APIs are structured, a lot of extra hits are made to the gallery. And so we think we can improve the performance of the gallery as well, and improve its availability by addressing some of these challenges in the PowerShellGet v3 space. So some other considerations that we've made at a high level that I'll talk about is allowing for a smooth transition. So I think things like install module are so ingrained in our workflows, and PowerShellGet is such a high usage module that we've put a lot of thought, and we continue to put a lot of thought into how to make this a smooth migration path and how to reduce friction as we move along. So those are sort of like the high-level goals, considerations when we decided to announce the project, begin investigating it, and designing it. In terms of specific features of the release, these are a few top issues that I just wanted to highlight. So the first one is PS resource priority. So if you're somebody who has multiple repositories registered, you've likely at one point or another hit the issue where you go to install a module and error. You must specify the repository that you would like to use. So this allows you at repository registration time to essentially order or prioritize your repositories so that the highest priority one can be chosen whenever you go to install a resource. I'll show this a little bit more, but basically the way that it works is you can set a repository score value between 0 and 50. 0 is going to be the highest priority, and the default is going to be 50. So PowerShell Gallery comes on by default with a default value of 50. If two PS repositories have the same value, the trusted one will be chosen first, and then after that we go alphabetical. Another feature that we introduced that I'll be showing is version string syntax. So previously in PowerShellGet we had minimum version parameter, required version, maximum version, and all these various ways you can specify version. We've taken a hint from NuGet and a number of other package providers and moved to a version string syntax so that you can specify exactly the inclusive or non-inclusive version range or a specific version just using a single parameter. So this is a big one that I'm pretty excited about and we'll be showing as well. And this is integration with secret management for credential persistence. And so what this means is that if you are using a repository that requires credentials, so maybe Artifactory or Azure Artifacts, you can provide your credential, or rather a pointer to your credential, which is stored in a secret vault of your choice. And so then every time you make a find or install call, you no longer need to specify the credential. Right now we have, with the save PS resource commandlet, a parameter that allows you to include XML, and what this does is it allows you to install any module to a particular path. I would love feedback later on if you all think that we should also make this an option with the install module commandlet. So basically, could you do install PS resource to a destination path, or if this covers your scenario. The two would essentially do the same thing. We also have added NuGet v3 endpoint support. Again, this goes back to the idea of if you're using repositories beyond the PowerShell gallery, and they are a v3 endpoint, not needing to like manually update the URI, so it is a v2 endpoint. So v2 support will be there and v3. We added a couple of new parameter sets to install. So one is a required resource, and this allows you to pass in a hash table or JSON object into your install, and so you can specify a number of packages that you would like to install with the specific information, like what gallery it may come from, what version you want, that sort of thing. Or you can save those as files, as a PSD1 or a JSON file, and have your required modules or required resources file, and then pass that into install. So this is like very similar to, or it takes after the PS Depends project, which is a very popular community project. And so we borrowed that model and are kind of bringing that in. It's also common in other programming languages as well. In publish, we added a path parameter that allows you to publish locally. And we added skip dependencies checks for install, save, update, and uninstall. So this is an additional parameter. It's not super clear the way that this is worded, but we added a skip dependency parameter for install, save, update, and uninstall. If you already know you have the dependencies or you don't want the check and you just want that particular module, that can save you a lot of time and hassle as well. So in addition to these features, there's definitely some breaking changes. And the biggest one is probably new commandlet names. So this was kind of hinted at in the last slide. But we are using the term PS resource really heavily in this module. So install PS resource combines all PS resource types, whether that's a script, a module, DSC resource, that sort of thing. So that's a big one. By the principle of making things just work, we've changed some parameters that are now on by default. So for example, allow clobber is on by default, and then we have a no clobber switch. And we've also worked to clarify, this should say parameter names. So a couple of examples of this would be, rather than having install, use force, which force is a bit of an overloaded term. It meant different things for different modules. It bypassed different checks. We wanted you to have to bypass as few checks as possible and then be really specific about what you were actually doing. So rather than like, if I have my module installed already, I don't know if it's installed already, I just want it installed. Okay, we want to reinstall the module. So that's why we changed the parameter name. We also did a real deep dive into the publisher check that was happening at install time and got really specific as to what it actually was checking. Is it actually a publisher check, and what platforms did it support? It was a Windows-only check. And so we clarified this by calling it an authenticode check, which is exactly what it's doing. It's checking the authenticode signature, and turned it off by default as it's a Windows-only check, to kind of give a clarified message as to like what was actually happening when you install the module. I mentioned that compatibility has been a really important theme as we continue to develop this module. So it's backwards compatible to PowerShell 5.1. It obviously works with PowerShell 7 as well. We also introduced a compatibility module, compat PowerShellGet. And so what this allows you to do is if you have this module, you can use version 2 PowerShellGet syntax and with the PowerShellGet v3 implementation. So I can call find module. It's going to make a best effort translation into the find PS resource, and then use that. So you can get some of the benefits right away without needing to update all of your scripts, because we understand that that's a big challenge. Also mentioned this earlier, but in terms of compatibility, we have added support for v3 endpoints for NuGet, but we're definitely keeping v2, and we're also exploring other types of endpoints that might be useful in the future. So with that, thinking a little bit about release timeline. So where we are in the progress of the module. So the RFC was published in November of 2019. We announced this big effort to rewrite PowerShellGet, and we got tons of amazing community feedback that really helped us to decide which of these changes to prioritize, which ones to make, and so that's been a really big part of our development. Back in March of 22, we had our first preview release of this module, and most recently we had our preview 14 release. This released on May 31st, so just a few weeks ago, and I'll be showing some of the changes with that. Next up, you guessed it, preview 15. I am expecting this release in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to show you exactly where we're at with both of these things so you can kind of get a better picture of where we're at. We're very close to being feature complete. And so once we're feature complete, we've started additional performance and quality work, and that'll be sort of our next cycle, as well as closing all the remaining bugs. And so once we are feature complete and the performance and quality checks are done is when we will RC. So looking forward to that coming up soon, but definitely no exact timeline. So I just wanted to show one thing. This is a very special in progress thing to show y'all that I've just been working on the past couple of weeks, which is A doc I made going through RFC, all of the issues that have been opened, all of the issues that have been closed in relation to this project to kind of mark through what exactly are the expected features and what is missing. So this will be available in a coming blog post, but wanted to give you a very preview look just so you can get a sense of, so the things that are in blue are the things that we have not implemented yet and haven't checked and tested. Everything in black is done. Not necessarily, there's a couple things in here that aren't quite released yet, but the PRs are in. So those are also black. So you can see like a lot of work has gone into this, right? Like a lot of features are complete, but we're not quite there yet. In addition, there are 4 open features that, to be really honest, I am in process with, in discussion with users and customers and our dev team as to if they're going to fall in like a 3.1 timeframe or the 3.0 timeframe. So I just wanted to make that sort of known. I have the linked issues here. So one is adding a scope parameter to repositories so that you could register your repository for all users. One is adding the required resource file for save module. Another one is adding destination path for install. As we talked about, this is possible through the save PS resource, but maybe not as clear. And I guess this will be save PS resource as well. And then we have another outstanding request to make the temp folder configurable. And this is a particular request for Azure Functions scenarios. So if you feel strongly about any of these, like please go engage with them on GitHub. Your feedback means a lot, and these are like real decisions that we're trying to make the cut in terms of like really important features that are exciting, and also to ship is to choose, right? Like we're trying to get ourselves to a GA point. So if you feel passionately, definitely give that a look. Alrighty, so now that we've got a little bit of a sense of like where we're at in terms of development, here comes the big question. It's been 2 years, like 2+ years. What is taking so long? Why have you had 14 preview releases? And the first answer is quality, quality, quality. We are so committed to getting this one right. I think that we could rush something out there and end up in the same situation we had with PowerShellGet v1 and v2. Both like very great modules, but ended up with a lot of quirky behaviors. And why this is so important is because PowerShellGet is critical path for PowerShell. The PowerShellGet is the gateway to all the amazing things that you're going to do in PowerShell, all the modules you're going to install and use. It's the social part, it's the community part of PowerShell. And so because it's a critical path, we are absolutely quality driven, we are not date driven, which makes it really difficult to provide ETAs. We will ship when we're ready, and we really want to get that right. We're also in the process together of inventing new stuff, right? Like some of these functionality and parameters have never existed before. And so that process takes time. And it's also the iterative process of open source that probably feels like it's so slow, right? We do a preview release, we get the feedback, we make changes, we iterate on the feedback, we open new bugs. That whole process of having 14 preview releases, I think is going to pay off in the long term, at least I believe so. But it's a slow one. It's not quite as fast. Trust is super important with this one too. We're really committed to security and privacy with this release, and so that's also been a hiccup at times, doing continual security reviews as we make our way through. But I feel like going back to one, right? Critical path for PowerShell, it's so important. And there's so much important work to do. I think that package management is really hard. You can look around and see lots of different solutions folks have come up with. And I think with PowerShellGet in particular, the goal is to make it simple, right? And so the goal is to obscure that complexity and to look at the final product and be like, wow, I have no idea why this took so long. And so I think that that can be a frustrating thing at times, at least for me, as I want to keep pushing forward towards these releases. Let's see if there was... Yeah, and I think the other thing, going back to the critical path for PowerShell, is the answer is we are hoping to ship in PowerShell. My goal is to ship in PowerShell 7.4, but we need a long preview timeline for that before we would ship in PowerShell. We have a lot of validation to make sure that the quality is there, that the performance really is better, and that like the compatibility works really well. And so those are all going to be big parts of the process of getting this into PowerShell. I hope over the long term it pays off and really gets rid of those frustrating scenarios around PowerShellGet. But because the goal is to ship inbox in PowerShell, it just raises that standard even higher as we make changes and all that. So that's kind of the spiel, but really what I want to spend some time doing is demoing, so you guys can get a sense for the new module and how it's going to look. Okay. Let's not make the same mistake we made earlier, and let's just duplicate these displays. Cool. Is this a good size, or do we need bigger? Good. OK, cool. So the first thing I'll show you is get command on the module PowerShellGet to see the commandlet interface. So we talked about this a little bit, but you'll see very similar to the commandlets you're familiar with V2, but they're sort of condensed into all being PS resources, and then we appended PS resource to some of the other ones like PS resource repository, that sort of thing. There was a multitude of reasons for that. A big one is also like confusion between the two modules, helps us a lot out with debugging, and allows for more of a side-by-side experience as well. But with that, if you want to use, say, find PS resource, you can provide a name like I'm looking for stuff related to AZ. And then I can provide a type parameter. I don't have to provide a type parameter, and I can return all types if I'm just interested in searching the gallery and finding whatever is related to whatever particular topic I'm looking for. But if I know that I want scripts, I can go ahead and run that as well. And there we go. I can see all the scripts that have AZ in them, kind of sort through them, and see what I am interested in. Similarly, let's just show this again. Type, you can tab through them, so you command, DSU resource, module, script, that kind of thing. With find PS resource, we have, let's look for, find PS resource, we'll look for PowerShellGet. And then show you just some examples of the version string. I could do something like, make sure it's a string, parentheses, comma, 2.0. So then I'm looking up at all versions up to and including 2.0 or up to 2.0. So you can see it'll return those versions for me. I could also do something, if I know I have a specific version, I want something like that. You can also do specific version search, but it allows you a lot of flexibility in how you search. Let's see if I have a little. This is available in docs and that sort of thing too. But if you aren't familiar with version strings, the basic idea of them, they're used commonly with a variety of different package managers, different programming languages, that sort of thing. All right, so if you run get PS resource repository, you'll see that so far all I have registered is PowerShell gallery. Of course, this is registered by default. By default, it's not trusted in priority 50. But let's register this Artifactory repo that I have to show a few different features with this. So first, I'm going to show you a little bit about the credential experience. I'm going to be using secret management for this. So I'm going to use get secret vault. You'll see that I have a secret store registered. I'm going to be doing another session that's like more hands-on getting started with secret management and secret store and all that. So we'll skip the details on that for now, but can see I have set up my secret vault. It's called SS, or it's my secret store, SS for secret store, or Sydney Smith, whatever you want. Then we have, if I run get secret info, this returns like secret metadata, so I can see all my secrets that I have registered. You can see that I've been using this to play around with PowerShellGet quite a bit because I have my Azure DevOps keys and creds and all that, and same thing with JFrog or Artifactory. So key point is I have my vault registered already, and I have my secret saved, my JFrog credential, which is a PS credential object with my username and pat for my Artifactory feed. And then with that, I also have saved my v3 URI, so you can see example of a v3 URI that you're just going to be able to copy and paste, whereas previously would have had to edit it to make it a v2 feed. Now that I have that, I can go ahead and create a credential info object. So I have a credential info object. It is a new object. Microsoft, PowerShell, PowerShell, PowerShellGet, util, classes, and it's a PS credential info object. I think there's an open issue about simplifying this experience, or I know that there is one. Would love your feedback on that. But what you do is you're going to pass in your vault name, so I have SS. And then I'm also going to pass in the name of the credential for my repository. So I have JFrog cred. Have that created, and now I'm ready to go ahead and register my repository. So I can do register PS resource repository. Name, I'll call it Artifactory. URI, I have my v3 URI that I showed. Credential info, I'm going to pass in my credential info object. It's going to show where to get my secret from when I need access. I trust this repository because I'm putting everything in there, so I'm going to go ahead and mark it as trusted. And then I want it to be the first choice, so I'm also going to give it a priority of 0. Cool, so now we have it registered. We can run get, or actually I think I just have this right up here. Didn't I just run that? Cool. You'll see I have both registered. Nice. So now that we have that, we can run find. So like, let's run find PS resource, get hello. I'll specify the repository. Artifactory can tab complete on that now. Cool, and it worked. You can see it's coming from Artifactory. It's just a test module. And we'll see, you might not have noticed before, I think, but we'll see if this refreshes. Well, anyways, it's definitely coming from here. We can also show another feature. So with the priority, if I don't specify a repository, it's just going to return the one from Artifactory already. But if I use repository and then I provide a wildcard, it's going to return all of the get hellos. And so you can see that there is one in gallery and gallery scripts. And so the reason for this design is that find should show what it's going to be installed. And so that's the reason why you would need to specify the wildcard if you wanted to find all available of a particular name. If you're using wildcards in the name, things change in that way. Cool. So then let's show this. So I can install as well. Install PS resource. Get hello. No, I didn't want that. And warning, get hello is already installed with that version. So let's use the reinstall parameter. Yay, cool. Worked well. So you can see that I didn't need to provide my credential again. I was just able to install. We also, as I mentioned, for publish PS resource, you can provide the path to the module that you're planning to publish as usual, but then you can also provide a local path. So say I have a local repo, local file share, something like that, or maybe I want to like just pass package the module and then use it someplace else, put it manually somewhere else, whatever the situation might be. This allows you to just publish to your local repository without needing to register it and do all these extra steps. Also wanted to show with install PS resource the required resource file parameter as well. So here I have just an example. No, that's not what I want. JSON example, not example JSON. I have this installed already, so I'm going to do reinstall, and then I'm also going to use this trust parameter so that I don't get prompted. I already know what I have in this file, so I just want to go ahead and trust this repository. Cool. So you can see that it went ahead and installed. You can do the same thing. I have a similar example with a PSD1. You can see that it's installing. Awesome. And so what you can also do, if we run psedit on the JSON example, for example, you can see how it's specified. So you can specify any number of required resources for your module, and then you just need to call install PS resource on that file path. You could also copy this and provide it in directly. So I could copy this, install PS resource on required resource and just put that in there. And then same with if we do psedit PSD1 example, you can see the specification of how you would specify any number of parameters. So I also could have done the reinstall in the trust repository within my configuration file if I knew that I wanted to do that. Gives you a lot of flexibility, but also allows it to be like portable from project to project or environment to environment, a check to make sure that you have all the resources that you need. Okay, and then one more thing that I wanted to show is the compatibility part. So if I do GMO, PowerShell, or let's do get module, PowerShellGet, list available, you'll see that I only have the PowerShellGet betas installed. So everything I've just been showing you has been, let me do this. You can see that everything I've been showing you is in beta 14, so everything I've shown you today is already released. With this, I can also show you get module compat, PowerShellGet, that I also have this compatibility module here installed, compat PowerShellGet. And so if I restart my PowerShell session, let's do that. If I do something like find module, PowerShellGet, oh my gosh, thank you. PowerShellGet. Not totally inaccurate. There we go. It's going to work. It's going to still function properly. You can use any number of parameters. This has been tested pretty significantly in the compat PowerShellGet module. However, if it is something that you know you're going to be using, I would say, like, especially as soon as we hit the RFC phase, it would be a really great thing for you to test out and find all the holes where it doesn't work with your script, so we can get those sorts of things fixed up. Of course, it's always going to be a best approximation, and because of some of the breaking changes, it might not always be exact, but it gives you a sense that you will be able to, in some ways, use the old commandlets. We're just making a decision too around the warning, if there should be a warning, if there shouldn't. So if you have thoughts on that, definitely let me know, or feel free to engage with us in GitHub. And so that was the last kind of demo piece or update I really wanted to give around all this. You can see that I have our GitHub repo open, and I wanted to just show you a little bit about how it works, so that if you are like excited about this, or maybe you're dreading it, I don't know, these updates, you have a place you can go to and get the most up-to-date information. So like, want to give like absolutely, like this isn't a change that's gonna happen overnight. As I mentioned, like things will start in preview releases when they ship in PowerShell, and it'll like slowly move its way along. But if you're eager to see like the next release for PowerShellGet, the place to go is to our GitHub repo and projects. This is the most up-to-date way to figure out what's going on. We update this like every time we update issues and PRs, and then as a team review it every Tuesday and Thursday. So you can especially guarantee maybe on Wednesdays and Fridays that it's super up-to-date, but I think it's up-to-date mostly all of the time. So you can see Beta 15 is our next upcoming release. We don't even have a to-do column in this because everything is already in an open PR. So in progress means that the PR is open and under code review. Done means that the PR is merged. And so as we watch those things carry on over, you can see all of the issues that are going to be resolved in the next release. So you can see that our next release has a few things. Done already is the update module manifest commandlet. These two other issues are both related to that authentic code check change that I made, which will be highlighted in the upcoming blog post. And then the next release is also going to finish the script file info commandlets. And so those will complete our commandlet interface for the time being. In our next project, which is Beta 16, you can see exactly what our prioritized issues are for this one. And in particular, we are focusing quite a bit of effort around performance in this one. And so you can see the specific ways we're planning to address performance if that's something that you're curious about. You can see our open PRs as well, which are all linked to those issues in the project. If you're like, what is going to ship in total in PowerShellGet? I have an issue that I'm really passionate about, and I want to make sure Sydney knows about it before she pushes the button on 3.0. The best thing to do is to go to our milestones. 3.0 resolved is the issues that we are committed to resolving in the 3.0 timeframe. So you can see exactly which bugs and enhancements we are planning on getting to. And we do update these very regularly. So if you feel passionately about something, let us know sooner rather than later. Try out our preview releases. Tell us where all the bugs are. And I think by the time we get to GA, it's going to be a really great experience. I'm sure I'm forgetting a million things. I know it's already been sort of a long day, and it's just day one, but it's exciting to be here. I have a few minutes left for questions, if there's any questions for folks. Yeah.
Yeah, two questions.
Mm-hmm.
First question is, before you show this report, we had just one URI. I was wondering, the previous version would also define like script location or something like that. Do these things go up in the row?
Yeah, so right now, for the register experience, we have a single URI. Yeah, that was based on feedback that it was confusing to have multiple URIs, and for most projects, it's the same. But yeah, love to hear a scenario if that's not the case. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll definitely talk.
The second question is, at the start of the session, you mentioned that other executables are also needed. NuGet, those kind of things. Is this going to change?
So those are no longer. Those were dependencies on previous versions of PowerShellGet. So in particular, it took a dependency on what's called OneGet or package management, and also on NuGet. And so we've removed those dependencies for future versions of PowerShellGet. Yeah. Yeah.
So I have two questions around the first is that are you guys going to upgrade the PowerShell gallery to V3 when you publish PowerShellGet V3?
The short answer is no. So like as like a adjacent project, we do have a lot of planned work on the PowerShell gallery side. However, that's not going to look like it's not synced with the PowerShellGet release. They're independent projects, but they're both projects that are going on. So yeah, the answer is no at this point. Yeah.
My second question is, if you save your credentials in NuGet, that will no longer work for PowerShell. Is that right?
Yeah. So they'll just need to be saved into secret management, or which can be any vault you specify. Yeah.
I think you mentioned at the beginning that install PS repository or resource to a location. Is that something that's going to be added? Is that something that you're concerned?
Yeah. So right now, that scenario works or is covered in our previews using save PS resource. And so the open question is if we're going to like basically alias that so that it can be used with install PS resource, so folks don't need to learn a new pattern. And that's an open question for us. I think it's definitely on the list of work items, whether it falls like as a 3.1 or a 3.0.1 or whatever it is, or if it's a 3.0. No. You can save it to a location, but not in a way that installs the module. So save module does exist, but it doesn't include the XML. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, maybe it'll make the cut if you like give it a good thumbs up for sure.
So the second question.
Yeah.
There was an issue like trying to install PowerShellGet. You couldn't update PowerShellGet from 1.0 to 2.0 because you needed to unload PowerShellGet in order to be using PowerShellGet. So have you been able to solve that?
Yeah, so one of the big issues with the version of PowerShell, there's two big issues in the version of PowerShell that ships in Windows PowerShell that I think make up a large portion of our total like user issues, right? And one is that you can't call update module on PowerShellGet in Windows PowerShell version 1 because there was a bug where, because it's shipped by default, it says, oh, I wasn't installed from the gallery, so I can't update. The other big issue we have is with TLS. So if your TLS version isn't updated, you're not going to be able to install from the gallery. And the error messaging isn't clear around this. We did address that in 2.2 something. And so in PowerShell 7, it's not an issue, but so there are two big issues that make it hard for folks who are on a fresh Windows machine sometimes to update their PowerShellGet. I guess there's like two projects, right? So like the PowerShellGet v3 work won't directly fix those issues because there's a separate project that I'm working on, which is to like update the version of PowerShellGet in Windows PowerShell so it doesn't have those two key bugs. But those efforts aren't necessarily synced. It's a totally separate process to try and get Windows to agree to let you change something, right, than it is to like publish our own open source project, but they're both work items that are underway. Yeah, totally. Well, I think we're right about at time, but definitely I'm sure folks have a lot more questions or thoughts around like the things I talked about or maybe didn't talk about. So look forward to speaking with you all about this the rest of the week. So thank you.